Hello, this is the Diocese of Truro, Hustings for General Synod, and I'm here with Reverend Andrew Yates. Now, Andrew, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to introduce yourself.
So first of all, thank you everyone for listening. I've no idea what order these are being shown in. If alphabetical order and Christian names come first, then it's A for Andrew, and I'm probably the first one. So here I am. And if I am the first one, then please do make sure you listen to everyone else. It's very important that you do hear all 6 views. So please do listen to everyone if I'm starting. Maybe it's alphabetical order by surname, in which case it will be Y for Yates. That will make me almost certainly the last one. So if that's the case, and you are still listening, a very big thank you for your patience, and I'm very impressed at your persistence. Of course, I could make some joke or reference to keeping the best to last, but I won't do that. I will just say a thank you for taking this election so seriously that you have spent time listening to everyone who is standing. It is a serious election, and I hope that you will, on account of that, prayerfully and thoughtfully consider who to vote and why you are voting. And while we're on the thank yous, I'd like to say a thank you to my proposer, Bill Stewart-White, and my seconder, Anne Brown, for their confidence in me. So who am I? I'm Andrew Yates, and my current appointment is the priest in charge of Paul. And right behind me is Paul Church. Some of you may recognise that as being the tower that you see as you drive on the A30 heading towards Penzance. This church is also part of the Penley cluster, and I'm one of the clergy in that cluster. This cluster is a kind of mini Cornwall. In Mousehole, just down the road from the church, we have second homes being sold for £1 million. 2.5 miles away, we have the most deprived wards in Cornwall, in Penzance. So our cluster contains a whole spectrum of what Cornwall is like. Our churches too also cover a spectrum of churchmanship. We have cafe church, we have formal sung Eucharists, we have online worship, we're still continuing, so those who still don't feel safe are able to join us in worship. We have garden worship, and we have lots more in between. So I think I have breadth of knowledge and experience of parishes right across the diocese, which I hope you'll see makes me a good candidate for this election. 17 years, I've also been in a dual role position of the Social Responsibility Officer for our diocese, SRO. Its main purpose has been to help churches get involved more in their communities and to serve those communities as well, as efficiently, as lovingly, in a Christian way as we can. So you might have come across me in the induction day for new clergy that I've run at County Hall. You might have come across me through Transformation Cornwall. I was part of the group that persuaded the Church Urban Fund to invest in Cornwall as one of the places for their new way of doing things. You might have come across me working with food banks. Also, this work gives me, I think, a very important background and a basis for being a representative for Truro Diocese at the General Synod. So, this next General Synod. Well, the basis of my pitch to be a representative for you is really on the trust that you shared 6 years ago. And I hope you feel that trust has been vindicated. For example, in this last Synod, I helped to steer a motion about the environment that was submitted on behalf of the Diocese of Truro, passed at our Diocesan Synod and sent up to General Synod. It arose directly out of the work that I and others were doing about climate change and about the church and environment. This motion broke new ground. It was a composite motion, which meant that it was combined with a similar motion from London Diocese. They had ideas too about environment, and we were asked to work together to put one motion. This was a very good experience of working with a completely different diocese and members of that diocese too. And I hope to repeat this same approach if I'm elected, but a little bit more about that later. Another part of Synod business that I was very engaged in was the question time. Each member is allowed in advance to submit questions on anything to do with church matters. These are then answered in full, sometimes in person, sometimes in written, by either a bishop or a senior member of the Archbishop's Council. There were several questions that we put about environment as a lead-in to that motion that we were putting. I also asked questions about low-income community funding, LICF, and I'd be very willing to take questions that you might have on your behalf. I think the finance is a very important subject for our next synod. We, as a diocese, benefit with almost £100,000, almost £1 million in LICF money. We've also had a significant amount of SDF, strategic development funding. Some of that funding is being used really well, and we've got some stories to feed back to the General Synod on how that has gone well. But we also, as General Synod reps, have to be accountable on how that money is being spent here. And looking at that, examining it, being able to be accountable and to see how that is going and using it in the most efficient way is important. So, question time, a good thing to be used. And as we are mentioning questions, I think the next thing that's going to happen is Kate is going to put to me for questions.
I am indeed. Thank you, Andrew. So yes, I'm going to put the same 4 questions that every candidate has been asked. And question 1 is the question that came up most when we asked colleagues what they wanted to hear about relates to the church and same-sex marriage. What is your view on this? What will your approach be when considering debate in Synod?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that the present situation is unsustainable. The traditional view that we are having at the moment is not shared by the majority of clergy, nor by the majority of people in our congregations, nor, perhaps most importantly, by the majority of people in our society. So there must be some movement on this. What this movement will be still unclear. We have to do a lot of listening. Also, it's very important that we try to take as many people with us. For when this change comes, it will not be easy for some. But we've had experience in the Church of England of doing that, of bringing people together when change has happened. And we can learn from how we've done that well, and perhaps some of the mistakes too. When it comes to the debate, I am a traditional Anglican. I have my 3 legs, my milking tool: Bible, tradition, experience. All 3 of those have to be listened to when it comes to making a theological discussion. And the important one, experience, how God is speaking to us in our own time. We've had a number of LLF discussion groups across the diocese. Hearing what came out of that will be part of the listening, so the diocesan view can be represented. Also, there are a lot of young people. We need to listen to them. And we need to test out what we might be saying at Synod, how that will be received by our young people. But let's face it, have grown up knowing nothing other than the fact that same-sex marriage is allowed. So lots of listening to do, and how I actually vote will depend very much on what the actual question is. But I guarantee to do listening to you and to many others before that debate comes.
Question 2. Campaigns under the banner Save the Parish have had lots of publicity recently. What would you take to General Synod from the issues that they raise?
Yes, you're certainly right, Kate. Save the Parish has generated a lot of interest, a lot of comment, a lot of discussion. If you haven't seen it yet, the talk that Alison Milbank gave at the launch of Save the Parish, it's really worth listening to. It's a really good description of the history of the parish within the Church of England. There's a lot to be learnt from that talk. So do look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it yet. But there is a danger that Save the Parish might become a bit nostalgic about looking back to something that was there maybe in the 1950s, maybe before that. And that is not somewhere we are to go. What the Save the Parish has done for me, and hopefully for others, is to remind us that the Church of England is not a membership organisation. The Church of England is not a gathered group. The Church of England has at its core parochial religion as something that is there of the community and for the community, or the parish, as we might want to call it. The charism of the Church of England is the church at the heart of the community, and the community too being at the heart of the church. Now, undoubtedly, the financial situation that our diocese and many others across the church are in are going to make for necessary changes. They're going to be hard for people to come to terms with, but as always, change has the opportunity for doing something different and something better too. This change is going to mean a church being not just the parish priest, but the church being a group of people who are leading worship in a way that members of the whole parish can come and feel part of. Members of the church being a group, a pastoral team, of doing the caring that has traditionally been done by the priest. To save the parish, yes, but let's understand what it is that we're saving, what it is that we want to see happening. So across our diocese, I know there are several churches, several clusters, benefices that are working on this model of clergy in partnership with lay people. That's a way to saving what is really at the heart of the Church of England. We might call that the parish. Let's be a little bit careful that we don't become nostalgic as we go forward into what I think can be daunting but an exciting future with new possibilities.
Thank you. Question 3. We received questions relating to the 5 guiding principles and mutual flourishing within the church. Where do you stand on the priestly and episcopal ministry of women?
Well, you won't be surprised because most of you know that I'm married to a woman priest, that where I'm going to stand in terms of women's ministry. Full supporter of it, recognising the benefits that women's ministry brings, and certainly something we need to encourage, see more of develop. In terms of the 5 principles, we do have to be honest and say that there is a lot of unhappiness, still around about these principles. As I've begun to ask why that might be, I think it probably comes down to the fact that when they arrived, they weren't really properly debated at General Synod. So they were never really owned by Synod. And there might, in that observation, be an important warning to us when we go forward and looking at other contentious issues that I'm sure will come up next time. For some people, the 5 principles clearly are seen as discriminatory. And I know there will be several women priests who are watching these recordings who will feel that is so for them. There are other people too who don't want to see the shambles of something like the appointment of the Bishop of Sheffield and the way that that presents the church to others. So what we need is understanding. Mutual flourishing is the word that's used. I think mutual understanding. And I think in our diocese here, we are a diocese, a community of clergy and churches that are very good at understanding each other. So let's push for mutual understanding, and maybe that's the key for the mutual flourishing that these 5 principles are aiming to make happen. I would just want to add to that, I've got the time, sorry, I'll go to the next question.
That's fine, thank you. Okay, so the 4th question, and final question. Tell us one area where you would like to make progress in this synod. What do you think is the priority?
Yesterday in Penzance, we hosted a Heart Edge Day led by Sam Wells and the rest of his team from St Martin in the Fields. At the beginning of that day, we asked the year 6 of our local church school what it is that's good about living in Cornwall, Penzance, and what are the challenges. This class discussed that and produced a few things that have actually spoken to introduce those that were coming from afar. One of the things, sort of the challenges, in fact, the first thing was homelessness and lack of housing. How sad, how terrible that 10 and 11-year-olds are seeing the lack of housing, homelessness, as an issue that they are putting there. I don't need to say that to you. Wherever you are, whether it's your year sixes or whether it's the pastoral ministry you're doing, you will know that housing homelessness is a great blight and a real challenge for us in Cornwall. So what I would like to do in the next synod is to get some sort of motion, some sort of moving forward so that the church is really leading on this issue. There's a lot of potential already there. There's the Archbishop's report coming home. And here in Cornwall, we have some really good stories. We have an example of our church taking a vicarage in Yates, leasing it long-term to St. Petrok's Society. We have good links with other housing associations. And Cornwall Council has just published an ambitious programme of trying to tackle this, which we shall support and learn from. So just like the environment motion, I would look for another diocese who's also putting this as a priority. And can we work together, learn from each other, and put a motion together at Synod that will actually even force our church to be more proactive, more caring, and make a difference so we can be seen in the issue of housing and homelessness, be leading and working with others. That's what I would like to see, and I would like to do the method we had already before, the track record, I think, worked successfully before, and let's hope if I'm elected, we could do that again.
Thank you. Andrew, you have an opportunity if you have anything else you would like to add or share.
Yes, I think I would just like to say a little bit of a reflection on being on Synod last time. Obviously, a lot was achieved, myself and my colleagues from the Synod. And I have personally to say, I gained a lot too from meeting a variety of people there. I always try to sit next to someone I hadn't spoken to. And that meant I came across the Anglican chaplain to Finland. I came across one of the youth representatives who was going to be taking part in that climate change, carrying the boat from Carbis Bay up to Glasgow. And out of those encounters experience, I was able to bring that back, and I certainly enriched my work as the SRO and our parish ministry too. And through the Diocesan Synod, particularly when Richard was with us, we were much better at feeding back what happened at General Synod. And I would want to continue that. We can do even better than that. So a feeding back of what's being decided, what's being discussed is an important thing I would like to try to do so that you, having voted for us, feel you are still in contact. A couple of things that I would want to see happening.